It was so hard to choose just one player to speak about, but I feel it's only right to go with someone who I've previously featured in a few of the lessons over on my own channel.
It's been a hunt for the melody that has really been my guiding light for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years.
Kirk Fletcher here, coming to you today to talk about the great New York session guitar player.
I'm here to talk about one of my favorite musicians.
Today, my favourite underappreciated guitarist, although he is also a writer, a producer, multi-instrumentalist, etc., etc.
For my time here today, I'm not going to talk about a singular underappreciated guitarist, but rather an underappreciated musical organism.
I'm Adam Levy for Guitar Tips. And in case you haven't figured it out already, this video is about unsung heroes and underappreciated players, guitar players. So I've invited a half a dozen of my guitar buddies, all fantastic players themselves, each to talk about one player who means a lot to them. Not necessarily the guys that wind up on the cover of guitar magazines, but the players that inspire them over and over and over again. So in this video, you're going to hear from Alex Farran, Eric Haugen, Michael Palmisano, Mick Taylor from That Pedal Show, Kirk Fletcher, Rich Hinman, and at the end I'll chime in and talk about a player who I think of as underappreciated, unsung hero for me. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please take a moment to like and subscribe. And now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to my friends.
Hey Adam, thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of this video. I really appreciate it. It was so hard to choose just one player to speak about, but I feel it's only right to go with someone who I've previously featured in a few of the lessons over on my own channel, and that player is the enigmatic Jimmie Rivers. His only album, recorded live at a well-known California dive bar in the early 1960s, is a raw, feisty and noisy affair, full of hoops and hollers from the excitable crowd. The tagline being, "The dancing starts at 9 and the fighting starts at 10. This Western swing group really has everything, from adrenaline-fueled blistering guitar work, jazz heads played in tight harmony with the great pedal steel player Vance Terry, and beautifully elegant bebop lines, all played out on Jimmie's twin-necked Gibson SG. This one record has been a constant source of inspiration for over 2 decades now, and I must have transcribed every scrap of guitar work on there in that time. Just one of the many things that I love about his playing is how ferociously he comes flying out of the gates and attacks his solos right from the off. Every solo has some kind of killer high-energy opening phrase that just grabs you. And then he manages somehow to continue that momentum throughout the rest of his solo. Pretty amazing. Similar to Django Reinhardt, Jimmie Rivers played with a fearless energy, and I find that extremely inspiring. I really feel that that's the main takeaway here, and that the licks and the lines are almost secondary to it. To play in an unfiltered, fun way with no fear, that's what it's all about. Regardless of genre or ability, this is something we can all learn from. And here are just a few little examples of that. And by the way, you can download my Guitar Pro and PDF files for these examples for completely free over on my Patreon page. So example number 1 is the opening lick of his solo from Back Bay Shuffle. Example number 2 is the first lick from his solo on Jammin' with Jimmie. check out the effortlessly cool swagger of this perfect opening line from Jimmie's Blues. I do have a full deep dive lesson on this piece over on my channel if you fancy learning the super catchy head as well as his complete solo. And the final example is the opening line of his Slow Boat to China solo. So I really do highly recommend tracking this record down. Unfortunately, I believe it's near impossible to get a physical copy of it these days. I picked up my vinyl and CD copies many years back for just a few quid. But luckily, having said that, most of these tracks have managed to find their way onto YouTube now. Anyway, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me, guys, and thanks again to Adam for giving me the opportunity to speak about one of my heroes. Do take care of yourselves.
Tomorrow evening, we'll be starting at 7 o'clock instead of the usual 9 o'clock. From now on here at the 23 Club, every Sunday we'll start at 7. That's so you can get drunk early and go home and get over it before work time Monday morning. So. All right? Be right back.
Hey, I'm Eric Haugen, and for my time here today, I'm not going to talk about a singular underappreciated guitarist, but rather an underappreciated musical organism, and that is two guitar players working together to make a really cool part. In this era of social media guitar playing, we see a lot of things that are one guitar player doing something really impressive over a backing track, like, I don't know. Now, all that stuff is really interesting and cool to work on, but I think it's creating some cognitive distortion as to what we think is our job when we're playing with other people. It's so much more about playing the simple thing that locks in with everybody else. And that, to me, is what television, Marky Moon, Richard Lloyd, Tom Verlaine, and honestly, the whole band, every one of them is doing just the perfect, simple little thing. Again, Tom Verlaine's part is just this little... You would never think by yourself in your room that that's a good guitar part. You wouldn't be able to hear it, but with everybody else, and then with Richard Lloyd's, equally, not a very interesting part by itself, but together with the bass and the drums and the vibe, everything is so cool. And so, yeah, my recommendation for this little segment is go check out Television's Marky Moon, that song and that record. It is a life-changing record. You put it on and literally the first song drops in with this great... Just New York, 1976, punk transitioning into new wave, but like jammy and guitar-y at the same time. All time, one of my favorite records, a game changer record. That's my recommendation for you today.
All right, Kirk Fletcher here, coming to you today to talk about the great New York session guitar player, Mr. Eric Gale. My good buddy Adam Levy asked me to talk about some more lesser-known guitar players that maybe had influence on me or inspired me in my guitar playing a little bit. And I just want to talk today a little bit about the great Eric Gale. Many of you may have heard of Eric Gale through, the theme from Taxi, the TV show from the late 70s, I believe, or maybe Grover Washington, Mr. Magic. His iconic solo and rhythm guitar on that is the first thing that I heard that got me into Eric Gale's playing. His playing, my older brother had Grover Washington Jr.'s record, Mr. Magic, and it had a very incredible solo that I've heard, for most of my life and I grew up listening to. And it's such an iconic sound. Eric Gale played a hollow body guitar, a Gibson Super 400, and he just had a really unique sound. He played it in a very rhythm and blues, R&B, soul guitar bluesy way. And it just really stood out. It was, basically no effects, maybe just a volume pedal or maybe occasionally a phase shifter. And he had a beautiful sound like on this neck pickup tone. And I think he used lighter gauge strings, so it really gave him a unique sound, and he could kind of bend and things, to kind of get away from the traditional jazz guitar sound, And one of the things that I really like about musicians is the musician can Eric Gale could incorporate his sound on many different styles of music, as opposed to incorporating, like a lot of session musicians incorporate a lot of different sounds to fit the music that they're playing. It's really hip to me that Eric Gale could kind of use this sound and use it on things by Paul Simon, Kenny Loggins, Stuff, Grover Washington, Bob James, and a host of other people, even Van Morrison. And he has well doubled on bass guitar on some sessions too. And he has a really identifiable sound. It's a very pentatonic bass, really bluesy approach to all of these different kinds of music. And that's what really stands out to me, and especially in the era that we live now, whereas music is, a lot of people just kind of play whatever is needed. He was a sort of a guy, sort of a rebel, like that would kind of stick to his guns and play his style. And if you like that style and if you like that sound, he would just play, that on your record, and it would sound great, and he was easily recognizable, and that's what I really love about his playing more and more, just the sparse, simplistic, really funky rhythm and really iconic lead signature guitar sounds, and he just fit in so much music of the 70s, especially. I think he got started right around the late 60s, maybe with Gary Burton. I think he played on something with him, as well as Hank Crawford, And Eric Gale was born in 1938, I believe, and he passed away in 1994 after a battle with cancer. And so I never got to see him in person, but I just, grew up listening to that sound. And if, you get a chance, definitely put your ear on Mr. Magic by Grover Washington. And the theme from Taxi, as I said before. And also the first Kenny Loggins record, Celebrate Me Home. He's playing some beautiful guitar work on that, as well as Bob James from the 70s, the Touchdown record, I believe. And he's also playing a little bit with Aretha Franklin too. Oh man, you can hear the sirens a little bit. North Hollywood for you. But anyway, this is Kirk Fletcher, and I'm signing off. Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this, Mr. Adam Levy. And hey, Kirk Fletcher signing off. All right, talk soon.
Adam, thank you so much for inviting me to come on here and talk about an underappreciated or underfollowed guitar player. Adam, when I first saw you play with Norah Jones, that performance in New Orleans, what really made me attracted to your playing was your sense of melody. Serving the song not just as a rhythm guitar player, but when you took leads It was singable, and you connected the chords in a smooth, fluid way. I started my life as a metalhead, bigger, faster, stronger. And as I've matured as a musician, it's been a hunt for the melody that has really been my guiding light for the past, 6 or 7 years. And in that quest, I discovered a player, Jack Roush. Now, anybody that has been a follower of my channel for any length of time knows Jack. I made a video, which I'll throw a thumbnail up here. I believe it was titled My Favorite Guitar Player in the World Right Now, which I released during the pandemic. And it's from Jack. What I love about Jack is his complete and total commitment to the melody. As guitar players, we have a syndrome, okay? Music is made up of harmony, rhythm, and melody, right? As guitar players, we generally start with rhythm and harmony. These chords in this pattern, right? And melody takes a total back seat. But in every other instrument, that is really not the case. We start learning piano, violin, horns especially, right? Because you can't play more than one note at a time, with the melody. And then you work into harmony. And I tell guitar players, all of my students, the answer to all of your questions is in the melody. What do I play over this? How do these chords work? Why does this sound good? The answer to those questions is learning the melody to every song that you learn and a commitment to being able to hear the underlying chords in everything that you play. And Jack Roush is my #1 go-to guy to be motivated, inspired, and educated how to do that. Jack's a total Nashville pro, but he's been very active on YouTube and Instagram these past few years. And I would encourage each of you to check out his channel. And I'll give you with one takeaway. Can you take a basic chord progression, like I was just doing, A major to D major, and can you connect those with basic melodies and hear the chords underneath? This is what Jack and you, Adam, do so well. And I hope that this video inspires each of you to think about playing guitar like other musicians think about it. Don't just put the melody on the back burner. It should be the focus. The melody is what makes the chords work, right? So can you hear? That's the goal. And for me, the man to follow, the man to learn from, for that is Jack Roush. Thanks, Adam.
Hi Adam, hello everyone. Thanks for asking me to do this. Today, my favourite underappreciated guitarist, although he is also a writer, a producer, multi-instrumentalist, etc., is John Leventhal from New York. Look up his credits on allmusic.com or somewhere else and get ready for a lot of scrolling. Of course, there are loads of people who are very well aware of John and his work. Rewind 20 years, I wasn't one of them. I'd moved to Cambridge in the UK to work on a magazine called Guitar Buyer, and the main photographer there was a good friend of mine called Richard Eccleston, Ecky. Ecky was banging on about this amazing singer-songwriter who I just had to hear, so I bought her latest album. That album was Whole New You by Sean Colvin, and boom, my world changed right there. Fast forward to today, and there aren't many weeks that go by that I don't listen to a record by Sean Colvin on which John Leventhal is either producing, writing, playing, or usually all of the above. There are a few things in particular I love about John's playing, and they all kind of come together to make the whole, like any great musician. First is it's a biggie, but it's harmony, melody, groove, syncopation that all sort of come together to be what I would call placement. So The parts are always interesting, harmonically, melodically. They always support the song, and there's quite often some kind of call and response going on, either with other instrumentation or with the main vocal. In the tracks I'll mention in a second, have a listen to how the multi-track guitars are kind of panned and mixed together. It's always so musical, and there's always a great deal of space. Next up would be tone. Incredible tone, and to say simple might seem like a pejorative term, but by simple I mean classic era instruments played masterfully, recorded beautifully. Strats, Tellys, Peanutty Gibsons, I don't know, humbucker Gibsons for that matter. Beautiful acoustics, mandolin, Fender 6-string bass crops up quite a bit, banjo, etc, etc. Effects are kind of minimal, although classic. So we're talking about echoes, we're talking about tremolo, and we're talking about spring reverb, maybe studio reverbs, given the extent of his production knowledge. Lastly, and while John Leventhal certainly isn't the only person to do this, he definitely was the first I can remember who didn't seem to be playing from an overt place of ego. We all know about that as guitar players, right? Because maybe that's why we get into it in the first place. And I do love that style of guitar playing, you know, the Guitar Hero thing. But I just don't get that from John. What I get is it always seems like he's in the mind space of writer, producer, arranger, mixer, always serving the song, always doing what's required to support the main melody or vocal. And I just love that. Here are 3 tracks to listen to kind of put together some of what I'm talking about. Amazingly, John Leventhal released his first solo record last year. I think it was in 2023. It's called Rumble Strip. Listen to the title track. The acoustic guitar playing and recording on it is just masterful. The record I talked about earlier, Whole New You from Sean Colvin. Another Plane Went Down. It's one of the mid-track listing tracks, and it is a perfect example of everything I was talking about earlier. Multi-instruments, different tones, call and response, supporting the song, beautifully recorded and mixed. Check that out. Lastly, try Modern Blue by Rosanne Cash. It was a 2013 album that they won Grammys for, The River and the Thread. This is an example of John setting up the song with a lead guitar line. And the reason I mention it, partly awesome tone, awesome playing, of course, as you'd expect, but listen to the kind of trill pull-off in the main lead line at the top of the song. I think that's a little pointer that it's John playing the guitar, kind of a giveaway and a real quintessential part of his style. And talking of style, here are 3 things that you can steal from him. I can't play like John Leventhal, right? But I'm going to share a couple of things that I do know. I'm going to turn the amp on. First is going to be a tuning. You can hear it clearly when you know. I want to say thanks to Mason from Vertex for doing a great interview with John Leventhal just recently, where John explains this. Anyway, the first 4 strings are tuned as you would imagine. So E, B, G, D. But then the 5th string goes from A down to G. And the 6th string goes from E down to C. So 2 whole tones, okay? We end up with... Next, what we're going to do is add a capo to change the register. I'm going to arbitrarily choose the 3rd fret. I was just messing about with this at home and it came out. It's a signpost to him rather than slavishly being like him. It includes one of those little pull-off things, and I think one of the things that John Leventhal does so well in his playing is, and indeed in writing, is to put in movement in chords where you'll get harmony, you'll get discordant, you'll get a feeling that something is going somewhere, and then at the end we'll often get a little surprise. Adam explains this stuff far better than I ever can, but anyway, I'm going to play it. Effects-wise, it's the stuff I mentioned earlier, but no delay. So we've got reverb and vibrato from a Fender Deluxe Reverb and some pedal compression. Okay, without it is this. flavour of Leventhal? I don't know. I'm going to use it in a song. Okay, that's it from me. Adam, thanks so much for asking me to do this. And thank you, John Leventhal, for the years and years and years of incredible inspiration. See ya.
Hey, everybody. My name is Rich Hinman. Thank you, Adam, for having me. I'm here to talk about one of my favorite musicians, and that is David Hidalgo of Los Lobos. So if you're not familiar, Los Lobos started in the 70s in East LA as a group of Mexican-American kids who were playing both rock music and Mexican folk music. So they were playing the music of essentially their parents' generation and playing acoustic instruments and learning traditional songs and traditional singing. And then sometime in the 80s, they kind of transitioned into fully being a roots rock band that maintained some of the sounds of the folk music that they grew up playing. And there's multiple guitar players in the band, there's multiple singers, there's multiple songwriters. But for me, as a listener, the heart of the band is David Hidalgo, who is a singer, songwriter, and guitar player. And it's kind of like, I always find it's funny, it's hard to get started to talk about like why you love the things that you love. But for me, so it took me a while to kind of get to this, but for me with David Hidalgo, I think there's a couple qualities that I really myself really aspire to in his music. And that is that, like, first of all, I don't really see him as a guitar player, even though he's a fantastic guitar player, or as just a singer. It's like he's a musician. It's like what he does is like an entire world that he's created, an entire sound. And sometimes that sound is embodied by the guitar, sometimes it's embodied by the singing, sometimes it's both, sometimes it's other instruments. He plays fiddle and accordion and a bunch of other stuff. And it's almost like it doesn't really matter what the instrument is. It's the entire picture that you're getting, the entire kind of sonic picture you're getting from this one person. So there's also a kind of like unfussiness, I think, an unpreciousness to everything he does. So I want to start with his singing. So I think if you wanted to start listening, if you were interested in David Hidalgo as an artist and you wanted to start listening to him, I would start with two records. One of them is the Los Lobos record Kiko, which I think is a masterpiece. And it's a long record. It's like 15 songs. I think David is probably responsible for writing and singing maybe 11 or 12 of them. And it's the range of the record is really extraordinary. There are a couple just like kick-ass rock songs, like roots rock songs. There are a couple beautiful ballads. There's some kind of there's a song in Spanish at the end. There are a few songs that clearly sort of have that feeling of Mexican folk music. A lot of beautiful acoustic playing. I'd like to kind of like get at a couple, like, let me just talk about a couple songs. So one of them is a song called Arizona Skies, which is actually instrumental. And it's beautiful. It just sounds like a traditional song. It's not, they wrote it, but it sounds kind of like it's one of those songs that's always existed. And it's just like a lilting, gorgeous, simple kind of like acoustic song tune. And in the second half, David comes in playing lap steel. And there's this part of the song that's like, it's not really a solo. It's more like a sort of like restatement of the melody, or kind of like a secondary melody that happens at that point in the song. And every time when I first heard it, I was just like, oh, I love this. I love this. I was a kid and I was just like, I love this. I didn't even know what an instrument was. I was like, I love this. I love the sound of it. I think it's awesome. That's basically what I thought about it. And now, like, I listen to it. I've been listening a lot to this record recently. And I was just like, I didn't even know David played the lap steel. Like, and did he practice it? And did he like work it up? Did it just come out? There is something about the way he plays that feels so effortless, that feels really, truly like it just came out. Like he didn't have to do anything to prepare it. And I know as the guitar player that's almost never the case. But there's something extraordinary about somebody just playing in this way that feels where there's nothing extra, nothing unnecessarily virtuosic. And this isn't about like, and I'll get to this in my next example, like it's not always underplaying. It's just that there's nothing extraneous and there doesn't seem to be any ego involved. And I don't know if there's another recorded example of David playing lap steel, but there's this lap steel part and it's beautiful. Another example, close to Arizona Skies on the record, I can't remember if it's the song after, it's like right around there. It's such a deep record that these are songs like 11 and 13 or something. It just kind of keeps going. There's a song called Just a Man that's David sings. And I think he's really one of the great American singers. And I think the singing kind of falls into the same, I think the description my description for the singing is almost the same. It feels effortless. It does not feel like he's putting on a particular voice, like he's trying to sound like somebody. It sounds like he's basically just, this is just what he's always sounded like, just comes out. And it's a really powerful song. It's kind of a minory, sort of dirgy song. It's an incredible vocal. I don't believe he plays guitar in it for like a couple minutes. And the solo comes in and it's this kind of like explosive blues solo. And it's the kind of thing that, to be frank, I usually don't care about, like a kind of like ripping pentatonic solo. And I find it absolutely riveting. And because of where it comes in, it's basically, there's been no guitar, there's been nothing. And it's sort of like the way it's mixed, the way he plays, how kind of the sound is kind of here, it's like right in your face. It kind of just explodes out of the speaker to me in a way that I find just like every time I hear it, it kind of like makes my like hair stand on end. Like there's something about it that's, and I think there's something important in that about, like sometimes when we're talking about choices or like taste with guitar players, like it's almost like, oh, there are these people that do things that are flashy, that are just for virtuosity's sake, and there's people that do things that are tasteful and that do things for the song. And like the fact is that first of all, that's a kind of a continuum, and like nothing is really, things aren't really black or white that way. And second of all, sometimes the thing that's great for the song is something that really explodes and is flashy for a second and is exciting. And I've had this experience as a sort of like working on recording sessions where sometimes like you spend the whole time doing the simplest stuff and then there's one moment when you really have to step on the gas and really do something. And the whole record is kind of like that, where it's like all of the parts that David plays are beautiful. Like they're always like in the right place. You sort of don't notice them until you actually pay attention to them and you're like, wow, that's really cool. but it's not like a cool part. It feels just like a natural part of the song. And it's throughout the record. And then you get this one moment that's just an absolute explosion. And it's awesome. It's like exhilarating. And to me, that's kind of like, it's like always for the song. And if it has to be lap steel, cool. If it has to be, I'm gonna sing this, like I'm gonna deliver this song as a singer and then come in with this like incredible solo 2.5 minutes into the song, cool. Do you need me to play like fiddle? Sure. You know, it kind of never ends. So that's that's the first record that I would listen to would be Kiko. The second one would be the first Latin Playboys record. Latin Playboys was sort of an offshoot, basically after they made Kiko. David just wanted to keep making songs, keep writing stuff that was kind of in that vein. And he and Louis Perez, who's the drummer in the band, but also one of the main songwriters and a guitar player, started this sort of side project with Chad Blake and Mitchell Froome, and it's called Latin Playboys. And it's mostly David singing and playing guitar. And that record is a great guitar record and super raw, and it has like interesting sounds, and I love it. But one moment I want to point to is this song called If, which is like a blues lyric, basically. It's essentially similar to the song that Taj Mahal sings, If the River Was Whiskey and I Was a Diving Duck. It's not exactly those lyrics, but it's like that. It's like a 2-minute song. But it's these blues lyrics. And it's this kind of little tapestry of guitar sounds. And it's somehow like, it's hard to talk about music. Like you kind of just want to like play it. But there are these kind of like drony, like gorgeous drony kind of like Fender-y guitar parts. And then there's this like really raw sort of DI sounding blues stuff. And they're all kind of like layered on top of each other in this beautiful way. But again, every part in itself is not fancy, is not fussy, is not extra. It's just like exactly what it needs to be. And the song has such a vibe, and the singing has such a vibe always. So I don't want this to go too long, so I'm gonna stop there, but I made a playlist. Oh yeah, I guess one more thing I do wanna say is that I think there's something also just about David's, specifically the part of his guitar playing that's like blues guitar playing, that there's something in that style of guitar playing. I mean, I was kind of referencing this when I was talking about Just a Man, but there's something about that style where he is able to do something that feels fresh and does not feel like someone, because blues, electric blues is hard. It's hard to make it not feel corny. And there's something about the way he plays that style that never feels corny to me and always feels fresh. And again, it's egoless. It's not check me out. It's like what needs to happen here. He also has a long and extensive career as a sideman. He's been in a lot of records. And I love everything he does. If he was playing a gig literally by himself, I would go see it right now. So I'm a huge fan of David Hidalgo. I urge you to check him out. I made a playlist that I'm going to send to Adam, and maybe he'll post and maybe add to. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hey, it's Adam here again. The guitarist that I want to talk about, when I say his name, I know that some folks will wonder how I can possibly think of him as an unsung hero or underappreciated player. I mean, he's been making records as an artist under his own name for more than 50 years. He's won, I think, 6 Grammy Awards. He has collaborated with some of the most incredible musicians from all over the world. He has scored films. Of course, I'm talking about RyCooder. And, right, so how can I defend my choice for RyCooder as an underappreciated player? Well, here's the thing. When you think of RyCooder, most folks are going to think of him playing slide guitar, bottleneck guitar. And that's correct, because he is one of the greatest to ever do that. So that's not a secret, right? But there's other aspects to his playing that I feel don't get as much attention, but that are really special and really inspiring to me. One of them is his rhythm playing on electric guitar, often in alternate tunings. So I'm going to point out a couple of songs in that world, electric rhythm guitar and alternate tuning, and then I'll talk about an acoustic song as well. Check out Tattler. That's a song of his on a record called, the record's called Paradise and Lunch. I say it's a song of his. Really, the song goes back to a guy named Washington Phillips, and you'll have to look him up. But Ry adapted the song and made it his own and plays it. It's really fascinating to me. He's got his guitar tuned in open G, so low to high. That's D, G, D, G, B, D. But he's not using it to play a song in G. He's using it to play a song in D. So the open chord, the big open sound, is the 4 chord, not the 1 chord. That's pretty unusual. Other people have done it, but it's not common. If you listen to Dire Straits' Romeo and Juliet, Mark Knopfler does a similar thing. Cooder, I should say, on Tattler is capoed at the 3rd fret, so you can do the math and figure out the keys and all. But capo aside, it's essentially an open G tuning, but for a song that's in D. And then it's so melodic and flowing, and it kind of sounds simple the way that he plays it, because he's got such confidence and vocabulary and all. But if you try to do it, it's not very intuitive. It took me a while. If I could play it right now, I'd play it for you, but I'm a little out of shape on it. But try it out, and there's lessons on YouTube. I'm sure you can find some help. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Oh, also on Tattler, the sound is so incredible. It's this kind of swirling sound. You might think he used a chorus pedal or a univibe or something like that, but from what I've heard, it was actually a Leslie cabinet, the kind of rotating speaker cabinet that you would usually associate with somebody playing the organ, Hammond organ. But Ry plugged his electric guitar through some kind of interface that let him plug into this thing, and they put the Leslie cabinet in a room by itself, probably a bathroom. That's a classic recording studio story. Oh yeah, we just put the amp in the bathroom. I don't know. I wasn't there. But they just let it stay in this slow rotation, and his guitar is going through that, and he's playing these beautiful chords with open strings, and it's just a really special sound. So that's Tattler from Paradise and Lunch. Another song I wanted to mention is called The Very Thing That Makes Her Rich Will Make You Poor. And that is played, as near as I can tell, in a D6 tuning. So it's like open D, D, A, D, F sharp, A, D. That would be open D. But the B string is up to B. And again, it's with a capo, so What I'm talking about is just the raw material of it, not with the transposition. But he's playing in B minor in this D6 tuning, and it's haunting all the way through, and then there's a section in the middle where he really stretches out, and it's just so funky and unlike anything I've heard anybody play on the guitar. There's a great live version of this on YouTube that you can find. Maybe I'll include a link so you can check that out. And it's just absolutely stunning and inventive and funky, and has nothing to do with Bottleneck whatsoever. I mean, on the album version, it's on The Very Thing That Makes Her Rich is on a record called Bop Till You Drop, and he does overdub a slide solo, so you can listen to that as well. But the part that I'm excited about is all the rhythm. It's just his thumb, the way that he's able to kind of play funky, almost a bass line with his thumb, and then play independently on top of that. It's it's not like Charlie Hunter or something where it's a complete bass line and a complete funk thing on top, but it's sort of in that family tree of playing the guitar. Anyway, check it out. Just super fantastic. And then the third song is a song called Canción Mixteca, from a record that Ry Cooder recorded with the Chieftains, and it's called San Patricio. And this is just an acoustic guitar thing in drop D. Cooder has done a bunch of tunes like, acoustic, solo acoustic, not in strict time, drop D. He's got this beautiful way of moving sixths around and finding just little pieces of chords, and the guitar just sounds gigantic. You almost think it must be tuned even lower than just drop D because it sounds so expansive, but it's mostly open position. He just has a way of playing melodically and with little two-note things, and sometimes three-note things, and sometimes some contrary motion. So check this out. There's I mentioned there's other songs where he does that kind of playing. Do look it up. You can find a lot more Ry Cooder. As I said, he's made many records. But these are the three songs that I wanted to mention as kind of super special, that you could, if this was all you listened to, it would be a lot to enjoy and be inspired by. So thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you learned about somebody new for you here, or at least learned something new about a player that you were already familiar with. Big thanks to all of my friends who contributed videos. I couldn't have made this without them. Eric Haugen, Alex Farran, Michael Palmisano, Kirk Fletcher, Mick Taylor, and Rich Hinman. I'll include some links down below so you can follow them and learn more about what they're up to. Again, if you're not already subscribed to Guitar Tips, there's no time like the present, so subscribe, like, share. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.